So I'm not usually the type of person who goes online and rants for an hour about how bad Raw was every week, but this week's show is such a clear showcase of what the WWE is doing wrong that I just feel like I have to talk about it. Up and down the card, you had things that didn't work or were bad ideas to start with, and it's just so endemic of what the WWE is doing wrong lately that before we even start to talk about the first segment, I have to talk about Roman Reigns first. So the WWE is in desperate need of a new top guy. John Cena is getting older and he's planning for life after wrestling, and his act is just getting stale. Half the fans hate him every week anyway. So it's time to create a new star, and Roman Reigns is the guy that they're going with. And you know what? It's fine. Roman is decently charismatic, he's a good-looking guy, and he cares about the business. He's willing to work hard to succeed. He's got good instincts, and he's got a decent pro wrestling background. If you're going to put the title on someone coming out of this tournament, you could definitely pick someone worse than Roman Reigns. At least he's not Kane or The Big Show or John Cena or Randy Orton. He's a fresh face, and he's got the qualities that are necessary to make a new big top star. Sure, he's green, and he's not everybody's favorite, but you gotta go with somebody, and you could do much worse than Roman Reigns. But none of that means that making him into a big superstar is gonna be easy. You've got to establish him as a big hero to the mainstream masses, and you've got to make him almost universally likable to your crowds. So you want to create a big hero. So to do that, you have to have him conquer a big villain. I mean, think about Luke Skywalker. Here's a character that became a big hero that can sell the mainstream audience a bunch of toys and merchandise so you can make a bunch of money, right? So first the movie establishes an oppressive, scary villain, and then we see the hero's humble beginnings. You know, he's yearning for a greater life, and then the tragedy that serves as his call to action. We see him struggle against problems that seem to be over his head, and then ultimately he gains the confidence necessary to use his hidden strengths to defeat the bad guy and save the day. This is the hero's journey. It's the classic story of good versus evil. It's simple, it's formulaic, but it works. This is the kind of formulated storytelling that has created nearly every memorable hero figure in fiction since ancient times, and is the basis on which pro wrestling was built. It's because we relate to the humble hero and then get to vicariously live the power fantasy of getting to take out the bad guys. That's what makes this kind of storytelling satisfying. So now let's talk about the first segment on Raw, and how horribly it botched this simple universal premise in trying to make Roman Reigns into this kind of hero. So Triple H comes out and he talks up Seth Rollins after his injury and asks us to sympathize with him. And given what's about to happen, this is a terrible idea. We as the audience are feeling sympathetic to Seth Rollins right now. The guy who got injured in a freak accident and his health was put in jeopardy, his career has been negatively affected. That's a situation that everyone can sympathize with. And since he's a great worker, has been putting on awesome matches, right now we like the guy more than ever, and we're hoping for a quick, painless recovery for him. Unfortunately, this is one of those situations where the death of kayfabe is negatively affecting the show, because we should hate this heel, but because we're thinking about the real Seth Rollins right now and not the character he plays on television, we're feeling sympathetic towards him in a way that the fiction of the show doesn't support. But the other thing that's really hurting this is that Triple H has not been playing a very consistent villain either. I'll get into that more in a minute. So at this moment, the crowd is cheering Triple H and is excited for what he has to say about the future of the WWE title, and then he calls out Roman Reigns. Triple H goes on to cut a charismatic promo trying to tempt Roman Reigns into siding with him. He tells Roman that the winner of the tournament can face him at Survivor Series, but if he doesn't side with him, then he's going to have to participate in the tournament himself instead, which is going to make his likelihood of winning the championship much worse. So while he pleads with Roman to turn heel and join the Authority, the crowd is chanting for Roman to go through with it, chanting yes, yes, yes. In the end, Roman Reigns sticks with his morals and refuses to join Triple H's side, and the crowd boos him for it. And why not? The crowd doesn't hate Triple H, and it's his own fault. He's gone out of his way to make the crowd cheer for him. He's made clever references, talked inside baseball, and basically acted like a babyface in order to draw cheers, even when he's supposed to be depicting a villain. Even when Stephanie McMahon, who has more naturally hateable mannerisms and is a more effective heel in general, she pulled the babyface move of introducing the NXT Divas and starting the Divas Revolution, so she hasn't been a consistent villain either, and she wasn't even out here to support Triple H's role as a heel, so it doesn't really matter. We're asked to hate Triple H, and we've been given no reason to. Week in and week out, we don't really know whether the Authority are babyfaces or heels. So now when we're asked to hate them and to care about whether Roman Reigns is joining their side or not, it just falls flat. The Authority haven't done anything to make us hate them since the Shield broke up. And sure, they cut a heel line or two here and there, like last week they teased the crowd with the Survivor Series main event, and then, of course, they told them they have to wait for the pay-per-view, but they've been way too inconsistent as heels to try and now use them as this big catalyst that's supposed to make Roman Reigns into a huge babyface. It just doesn't work. Also, if you're a fan of Roman Reigns, then by what logic do you not want him to join Triple H's side? I mean, if you're a big Seth Rollins fan, life has been great for you the last several months. He's been working the top of the card, having 4+ star matches for about 8 months now. If you like Roman Reigns and you want him to succeed, then why shouldn't you want him to join the Authority? We all know and see how the bad guys get to be cooler and more interesting than the good guys in WWE anyway. This is why people want John Cena to turn heel. It would make him more interesting. So now Roman Reigns has to fight the Big Show. Like, that's a big scary threat that's going to prevent him from winning the title. Of course, we've already seen Roman Reigns beat the Big Show before plenty of times. And the moment you heard his music, you knew he was coming out to job, so the value of Roman's victory over him is 0. Then we see the tournament bracket. And you can already see what the problem with this situation is just by reading the names. I want you to look at the names on the right side of this screen. These are the people who are eligible to face Roman Reigns in the finals. And tell me, so among these people, who's going to be the bad guy who Roman Reigns is going to beat for the title in the finals at Survivor Series? Maybe you're looking at Kevin Owens. Well, that's a big mistake, because a very loud, passionate section of the crowd is going to cheer for Owens and boo when Reigns beats him if that's what you go with. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the wrestling nerd section of the audience and why they're important even though they don't represent the big numbers and big money that the mainstream audience does. In fact, let's talk about another example in sci-fi movies, the Star Trek reboot from 2009, and how it was a big mainstream success and critical success, despite how the nerd audience now feels dissatisfaction for it in retrospect. You see, when Star Trek 2009 came out, you had a lot of the nerd audience pissed off, but you didn't hear massive outcry. You didn't get rioting on the internet about it. In fact, lots of nerds like this movie and will continue to defend it. That's because those in charge of making this movie knew they had to do a few things right in order to prevent a huge amount of nerd outrage. Now, why should they care? Of course, nerds don't make up a large enough portion of the audience that'll ruin the movie if they don't go see it. And I mean, they're Star Trek nerds, so of course they're going to go see a Star Trek movie when it comes out. The mainstream audience outnumbers the nerd audience at least 10-1. But when the mainstream audience decides whether or not to go see a movie and afterwards how they feel about it, they're subject to a lot of outside influences. They listen to the buzz that's brewing on social media, they look at what critics are saying, they check Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, and when there's a huge negative buzz surrounding a movie, even if it's only being caused by nerds, they hear about it and it colors their opinions, and that can be a problem to a movie's public image and legacy. While nerds may not have the numbers that the mainstream audience has, they're far more vocal and passionate, and their voices have a bigger effect on the overall public image of a movie. Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace is the highest grossing of all the Star Wars movies in theaters. It was, by all metrics, a mainstream financial success. All the prequels were. But now that Disney owns the Star Wars franchise, they're disowning the prequels. They're pretending like they never happened. Why would they ignore these movies that were financially successful in theaters? Well, it's because the public image of these movies is that they're awful, and nerds have successfully shit on them for so long that they're widely regarded by everyone as being total trash. You just can't piss off your most vocal and passionate fans and expect not to take a hit in return. If Disney decided to embrace the prequel stuff, it'd piss off Star Wars fans so badly that you'd get massive protest, boycotts, nothing but negative buzz all over the place, and that would affect the movie's bottom line. So when big companies like Disney and Paramount are going out of their way to not piss off the nerd audiences for their big-name franchise, you should realize that it's important. That's not to say that Paramount and Disney should make the Star Wars and Star Trek movies just for nerds. That would be dumb. But they are being made a certain way to prevent nerd outrage from ruining them. A lot of important decisions are being made exclusively to prevent nerd outrage by these companies. Now stop and imagine that while you're watching the movie, you're also hearing the nerd audience yell at the screen and tell you why what you're watching sucks and how bad it's not working, and you've got an idea of just how important this should be to the WWE. Crowd noise is important to pro wrestling. It colors everyone's perception of the story, and the people most willing to spend big money on ringside seats and go to pro wrestling events are the people who are the biggest pro wrestling fans, and that's nerds. As a result, you've got the nerd audience sitting right there, booing into the microphones when you piss them off. Again, it's not that I'm saying the WWE has to cater to the nerd audience at the expense of the mainstream crowd. If they did that, ratings would probably tank. But when you're trying to create a new megastar, a new top of the company babyface, you have to manage this nerd audience so they don't ruin it. So again, let's get back to this tournament. Nerds love Kevin Owens. If you put Roman Reigns over Kevin Owens in the main event of Survivor Series, there is going to be heavy booing from the crowd. And that's not what you want when you're trying to coronate your next top babyface. But look at the names on the right side of this screen. Who else can it be? Remember, you want to avoid a negative crowd reaction, but you also want to put Roman Reigns over as a big hero who's defeating a big villain. Fact is, none of these names work for that purpose. Wade Barrett has a goofy king gimmick and has been chumped out in just about every match he's been in. And The Miz is a joke. Tyler Breeze is brand new and he hasn't been given enough time to work as a top heel yet. So maybe I'm wrong and they're not going with Roman Reigns as the winner of this thing. But who else on the left side of this bracket has enough credibility to take the babyface role? Nobody. So we're definitely talking about Roman versus Kevin Owens, or maybe Roman versus Ambrose. Roman versus Ambrose with Roman turning heel could work, since I think if you turned on Dean, you could get heat. But if that's where you're going, then this opening segment doesn't make any sense. It makes a future Roman heel turn baffling. He's already climbed back to where he was before this tournament started. And as a result, a heel turn makes no sense. There's nothing in it for him. If he can do it on his own, then why would he turn to the Authority if we've established that he doesn't want to? There's nothing to tempt him to the dark side since he's already made it on his own. So we start building up towards a Bray Wyatt segment where he's going to be eulogizing The Undertaker and Kane. And all throughout the show, we're going to be looking at The Undertaker and Kane's biggest moments in history, as if we're never going to see them again. And that to me is the other big fuck up on this show. But there's a couple of other weird decisions on this card that I'd like to talk about real quick. So Kevin Owens beats Titus O'Neil and advances in the tournament. And then we get Paige versus Becky Lynch. And this ends in that stupid finish where Becky Lynch beats Paige, but then Paige beats her up after the match, and Charlotte has to save her, so nobody gets over. Becky Lynch makes Paige look like a chump by beating her, but Paige makes Becky Lynch look like a chump by beating her up after the fact, so everybody looks like a chump all around. This kind of finish doesn't benefit anyone. So Dolph Ziggler beats The Miz, and then we get a segment with Zeb Coulter and Alberto Del Rio. Now, what the fuck is going on with this Zeb Coulter gimmick and this Mex America stuff? Are we actually supposed to hate the idea of Mexico and America, like, cooperating with each other and, you know, building up on each other's strengths? Like, is that supposed to be a hateable idea? And furthermore, why is Alberto Del Rio a heel in the first place? Isn't the benefit of hiring Alberto Del Rio back and giving up a bunch of money to drop Lucha Underground and AAA the idea that you're supposed to create a new Hispanic star that, you know, Hispanic people can look up to and cheer as a babyface? But even if we are going to value the idea of Alberto Del Rio as this heel, I got 4 little letters for you, and it's KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Pro wrestling isn't supposed to be, you know, like a head trip. It's supposed to be simple. We're supposed to have clear heroes and clear villains, people that we hate and people that we like. This whole Mex America concept is just a little too intellectual, and it's not that I'm against intellectual ideas at all. I'm into that sort of thing in the right context, but wrestling just isn't the right context for this story. And when you're throwing this idea out there and then trying to do heel lines to try and support it as this villainous thing, I just don't know what to feel about it. These guys just aren't clear-cut villains or clear-cut heroes, and the result is that it comes off flat. It just sucks. And then we get another Divas match with like the same dumb finish. Yeah, who cares? And then we get Sheamus versus Cesaro. Now, I'm not a Sheamus fan. I don't really like him in the ring. I don't really like his character. I don't really think he's that charismatic, that useful. And frankly, having Sheamus as a mid-card guy is fine to me, if that's what you're going to do with him. But he is the Money in the Bank holder, and with that title comes some potential for the guy to mean more to the company than just another mid-card guy. And I mean, they seem to like the guy and seem to want to do something with him. And then they have him come out here and get beat by Cesaro. Now, I like Cesaro. Cesaro's great, and I wish they'd do more with him, but they've also cut the rug out from under him lately in a way that makes it weird that he's beating Sheamus here and moving on in the tournament. Now, this makes Cesaro the guy who's going to face Roman Reigns next in the tournament. If the idea is that you are going to build Roman Reigns up to be a big hero, then why wouldn't you have him beat up Sheamus, the guy who everyone hates? Mainstream audiences and nerds alike hate Sheamus. They're going to cheer Roman Reigns when he beats him. But instead, you chose Cesaro to win here. And that means that Roman Reigns is going to face a guy that nerds and mainstream audiences like more than Roman Reigns. And that's just a baffling decision to me. Why wouldn't you have Roman Reigns beat like 4 solid villains and then win the title as this glorious hero? Why would you have him face Cesaro in the middle of this tournament? It doesn't make any sense. And as much as I like that Cesaro is getting a win here, there's no way he's going to beat Roman Reigns, so what's the point? I mean, this match isn't going to make or break Cesaro's career, so you might as well have him lose to Sheamus and then have Sheamus go up against Roman Reigns as this hateable bad guy. Just makes way more sense. And we know they're not going to use Cesaro as a top babyface. So whether or not he wins this match is not going to make a big difference to the bottom line. I just don't know why Cesaro won here. It doesn't make any sense to the overall narrative. I mean, I'm glad he won a match. It just seems to be at the expense of the overall story that you're trying to tell on this show. So Dean Ambrose beats Tyler Breeze, but Tyler Breeze gets a good showing out of it. And I'll use this opportunity to praise the WWE on something they're doing right. I think they're really handling Tyler Breeze's call up pretty well. They're putting over the idea that Tyler Breeze may be a fancy boy, but he's also very aggressive in the ring when he gets a chance, and that he's got this temper, and that he's good in the ring, and that he's an effective fighter. Now that's important to putting Tyler Breeze over and making him a character that fans can care about. So really, I think Tyler Breeze has been handled well since he's been called up from NXT, and that's something that the WWE really could have botched. So I'm happy about that. And then there's a fun New Day 6-way, and those guys are really entertaining, and it was a fun match. And then Bray Wyatt comes out for his promo, and at first he pretends to care about respecting the Undertaker and Kane and their legacy, and then he sort of turns heel on them mid-promo, and that's okay. I don't think that's strictly necessary. I think you can have a heel that, cares about the people who've come before him and is trying to build himself up on their legacies. But whatever, it's not important. What is important is that at the end of this promo, the Undertaker and Kane come out, and they surprise the crap out of Bray Wyatt, who sells it as being really scary. And he's super surprised by this. So how is Bray Wyatt surprised that these two guys are alive, if they're alive? What did Bray Wyatt do to them to steal and eat their souls? If he really did steal and eat their souls and kill them, then they shouldn't be okay again already. It's only been 2 weeks. And if he didn't really steal their souls and he just bribed a guy in the production truck to make the lightning and fire happen, then he shouldn't be surprised when they come out here to kick his ass. And maybe this is all mind games and he just wants to conquer the Undertaker and Kane and make it seem like he's superior to them. But then when he sells with all this tremendous fear when they come back out again, it makes it seem like he didn't realize that they'd be after him. So either Bray Wyatt is stupid or he's just a very ineffective soul-stealing ghoul. Either way, it makes him look like a chump. So then Bray Wyatt summons the Wyatt family, and then the Undertaker and Kane just run through them. These two old, stale characters who are at the end of their careers just run through the Wyatt family and make them look like assholes. And I mean, we've been spending the entire show looking back at their careers and all the times they've been dominant in the WWE and remembering how badass they are. So we don't need them to look even more badass now. We really needed the Wyatt family to look strong. It looks like we're heading into a Survivor Series match with the Undertaker and Kane versus the whole Wyatt family. So I can understand how you might want to keep them strong, but really we already know that the Undertaker and Kane are strong and badasses. We really need the Wyatt family to look strong into this if we're going to believe that they have any chance of winning. Even though this is 4-on-2, we've seen The Undertaker and Kane conquer greater numbers so many times that we really need the Wyatt family to look strong going into this. And who really benefits when The Undertaker and Kane destroy the Wyatt family single-handedly or double-handedly? The Undertaker is in the twilight of his career. Every time we see him at WrestleMania could be the last. And Kane is this really stale character who's been unmasked on TV most of the time and has been this smiling, goofy dude with a mug. We should be spending this time to try and put over the Wyatt family as the future of the dark, scary, supernatural part of the WWE. Once again, we're cutting the legs out from under the present in service of the past. And that's a big part of why we don't have anybody in this tournament who is ready to pick up the torch and lead this company into the future. And the WWE does this all the time. You look at Shawn Michaels chumping out Seth Rollins on the mic, and a few weeks ago when the ratings were really taking a tumble, they brought in Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels and Stone Cold to try and prop up the show, but they didn't really have anything for them to do. But they needed old stars to try and prop up the ratings because they just keep undercutting their present day stars and their future stars. And this segment was really endemic of that, and it's really frustrating to me as a fan. I want to get invested in Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt family. I want to be involved in this story. But not only is having these 4 guys get beaten up by those 2 guys really unrealistic, especially since they're such big dudes who look like they should be able to beat these guys up 2-on-2, let alone 4-on-2. I mean, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan are being treated like they're cruiserweights just because Braun Strowman is maybe a few inches taller. They're all giants. You can treat them all like giants. And while it's okay for Bray Wyatt to be this Weasley cult leader who's surrounding himself with giants for protection, this segment really chumped out Bray Wyatt himself. If he was able to summon the thunder and the lightning last week, why didn't he summon it now when it could help him? I mean, what's changed? The realism and the logic of this segment are just terrible. And like I was saying before, it's just a showcase of what the WWE is doing wrong and why it's frustrating and it's not working. With a segment like this to end Raw just gives you a bad feeling about the show overall. We always remember the beginning and the end of things. That's human nature. So with a start that really didn't work and an ending that really didn't work, or rather it worked but at the expense of Bray Wyatt so badly that it leaves us with a bad taste in our mouths. I mean, the crowd was cheering, but what are you sacrificing in order to get that pop? It's basically undercutting one of your big matches at Survivor Series and one of your long-term big characters. There's only so much damage control that Bray Wyatt can do for himself in promos. He's been used to put over other guys over and over again at his own expense. You have to make him into something in order for him to put someone else over, or him losing is just meaningless. So that's why this show felt terrible. And it really wasn't terrible. There were good matches on this show, but there were a bunch of finishes that sucked, and the segments were so poor that it just held down the rest of the show and made it seem bad. And that sucks because Raw's been pretty good the last couple of weeks. It's had more direction than it has before. This tournament helps Raw to continue to have a direction and a feel of progression that Raw has been lacking before the last few weeks. But the booking in the first and last segment was so bad that it just made the whole show feel shitty. And that's why I had to talk about it, and that's really all I have to say. I hope this wasn't too long or too boring, and maybe I'll do this again if people are interested. Thanks for listening to me rant. See you around.